happy to have this very full house here today for our, thank you, Courtney. For our, I don't know if Johanna's as short as I am. Okay, she is, okay. For our first event this semester in the Drescher Center Humanities Forum. We are co-hosting this event with our sister center, Circa. So you'll get to see the director, Lynn Casabon, in just a minute. My name is Amy Freud. I'm the director of the Drescher Center and a professor of history here at UMBC. And I'm really happy to see so many faces in the crowd. So I know that you're excited and ready to hear from our speaker, but I just want to tell you a few things about what's going on this semester in the Drescher Center. So we have a series of Humanities Forum events. They are usually in the library gallery and usually at 4 p.m., but if you are uncertain, you can always go to dreschercenter.umbc.edu. The next event in the Humanities Forum will be part of the Department of Ancient Studies Week, and they're going to be presenting their annual lecture, which this year will be Disability and the Ideal in Archaic Greek Art by Debbie Sneed, Assistant Professor of Classics at Cal State University, Long Beach. So we're going to continue talking about art, and we've got people coming out from California constantly. This event will take place on October 15th at 4 p.m. here in the library gallery. This afternoon's event is being recorded, and it will be made available on the UMBC YouTube page. Before we begin, I'd like to make a few announcements. First, I want to acknowledge that UMBC was established upon the land of the Piscataway and Susquehannock peoples, and over time, citizens of many more indigenous nations have come to reside in this region. We humbly offer our respects to all past, present, and future indigenous people connected to this place. While we recognize the importance of acknowledging those who came before us, we also know that truth-telling is only a small gesture. And we've been talking about this in the Drescher Center, the importance, the need for land acknowledgements, and also how they only provide a small way to make up for and repair past history. And so I would like you to know that in the Drescher Center, we strive annually to have an event that is related to Indigenous studies, and you will see that later this spring. Finally, I want to thank our partners who made this event possible. This event is part of a very exciting initiative this year, the Arts Plus initiative. The College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences are sponsoring this, I guess I should say, year-long initiative with support from the Provost's office. It's going to be a lot of fun, and you'll be able to see a variety of arts and humanities-oriented programming. Additional sponsors for this event include the Center for Innovation, Research, and Creativity in the Arts, or CIRCA, the Center for Social Justice Dialogue, the Department of Gender, Women's, and Sexuality Studies, the Latin American Feminisms Faculty Working Group, the Latin American Studies Minor, the Latinx and Hispanic Faculty Association, the Mosaic Center for Cultural Diversity, and the Orser Center for the Public Humanities. Evidently, everybody wanted in on this event. I'm seeing a lot of you standing up and back. We will be getting some more chairs out for you, so thank you. Hold steady. This is exciting to see so many of you. I also want to say that you have an opportunity today to win one of the posters by our speaker today. So we will be passing around raffle tickets, and if you would like to be entered into the drawing, you just put your name. Where's Maria? She left. Did they just put their name, Maria, on the ticket, or? And you have the other half. Okay, so you don't even need to do anything. So we'll be going around with tickets so that you can take home a memento of street art. So I want to turn things over to my colleague, Dr. Lynn Casabon, who will introduce our speaker today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Amy. Before introducing our guest today, I want to thank Courtney Hobson and the Drescher Center for organizing and initiating this event, and I'm so happy to be a co-host. So I'm Lynn Casabon, I'm the director of CIRCA. So Johanna Toruño is a Salvadoran-born community-taught visual artist who uses the streets as public platform and gallery. She was raised in San Salvador until being displaced to the US at the age of 10. She's inspired by her experiences growing up in the aftermath of the Civil War to use poster work as a medium to self-express and center a queer migrant lens. Johanna is the founder of Unapologetic Street Series, a street art series that's exhibited at public spaces such as walls, utility boxes, and mailboxes. Her bold imagery and statements, often adorned in lush florals, celebrate queer, working class, and immigrant communities. Through her work, she challenges social norms and centers messages of self-reflection and self-acceptance. Using a soft aesthetic with colors that remind her of home, Toruño brings storytelling and a chance for her audience to relearn and decolonize their own self to accessible spaces. Her political and social messages highlight topics of reimagining norms and the joy of holding space for collective liberation. Johanna has been a TED speaker and a lecturer at a number of other respected universities like UMBC, including Stanford, Princeton, and Columbia. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, Teen Vogue, on NPR, Nylon, and many more. So please join me in welcoming Johanna Toruño.
All right, thank you all so much for bearing with us today and for being here. You could be doing anything and you're here today, so I really appreciate you for your time. My name is Johanna Toruño. I'm the founder of the Unapologetic Street Series. I'm just gonna start off with a few house things, to set a cute vibe here. You may hear my voice shake for the first 5 minutes. I am very nervous. I'm a huge introvert. I'm a Capricorn, so, I like to be at home. But I'm here with all of you today, so like I said, I will be fine, but you may hear it. So just letting you know. Another thing, if you're here, thank you for being here, but you also, if you need to get up and leave, please don't feel bad, especially for your first, second row folks. I know that when I'm at an event, I don't like sitting in the front row because if I wanna leave, honey. I don't wanna feel bad, okay? So please just take care of yourselves. If you need to get something to eat, please step out. If you need water, just do whatever you need to do. But we're gonna start this off today. I'm gonna share about my work, but I do like to start a little bit with who I am so that you have some context for why the work exists, because I really do believe that my work wouldn't if I didn't have the particular life experiences that I do. So we're gonna start there. Yay, okay. That's so cute. You guys can look at it for 2 seconds because it's really cute. All right. Okay, who am I? I still wonder, but I was born in El Salvador towards the end of the Civil War, which I do feel like when I tell people that, it kind of ages me, because they're like, Civil War? What does that even mean? But, early 90s baby. My mom was a journalist at the time, so my mom was working really heavily in journalism and trying to, I guess, tell folks what was going on in the most truthful way possible. So I grew up with hearing and learning a lot about what was going on. I'm the child of a single mom, and Salvadoran single mom, was in El Salvador till I was almost 10. I immigrated to the United States. My family was in California. My mom had a lot of brothers who were living in LA at the time when she came. I have a very, what I guess you'd call like typical parent and migrant experience. My mom came first for a good year and to get work and to find a place for us to live. By the time my mom came, it was almost a year, and she left California to come to Richmond, Virginia. So every time I tell people Richmond, Virginia, like if I'm on the West Coast, it's like crickets, but I know y'all know what I'm talking about. So she is still in Virginia. I had a very niche Southern migrant experience, as you all can imagine. I came to the US not knowing the language. I actually came to the US not knowing that I was gonna leave. I don't know if, raise your hand if you've ever read Solito by Javier. Okay, yes, so in Solito, he talks about, for a lot of Salvadoran kids, you knew that people were leaving because your friends would come to school, but then your friends would stop showing up. And everybody knew that that's because they were leaving to come to the United States. And I had a very similar experience. I just one day didn't return to school, and I thought I was going to. I came to the US with my aunt and a little Star Wars book bag. And honestly, I was really, really horrified when I got here because it was November. So it was really cold. And this was like, I guess almost like over 20 years ago. So we still had snow in November, right? Sometimes. And I saw snow for the first time when I was 10 years old, and I was not happy about it. I told my mom, I was like, this is like the worst thing I could ever experience. And she was like, don't be ridiculous. Like, it's snow, it's beautiful, it's nature. And I'm like, no, like, I'm from a beach town in Central America where, you know, I'm a summer baby, even though I was born in December, you know, and I come here and they try to tell me that I'm a winter baby and my birthday is in the coldest months possible. And I'm like, this can't be, like, this can't be. So I've always had a disdain for my migration, to be very honest with you. I wasn't romanticized from a young age by the United States. I didn't like it here. It was very different. It took a while for me to get used to it, but I was also a kid, so I learned the language very quickly, and I got used to it very quickly, and you know, so. But from a young age, because of those things, I began writing and creating about my experience being so far away from home, also adding the context of being an undocumented migrant for such a long time, not being allowed to go home. My parent not being allowed to return home was a huge thing for me and a huge trauma for me. And you know, I would always dream about returning home, and then I would have dreams that I was like accidentally driving over the border and I wouldn't be able to come back in. Ask your undocu friends that, and we all have those dreams. But yeah, so all of those things led me to growing up, having this experience. I was also incarcerated at a pretty young age, you know, just for fighting in school, but I was, you know, I was hit with a proper charge. So I was incarcerated for a few weeks, but then I was on probation from the time that I was almost 16 to almost 18. They released me because I was turning 18. And this is for fighting, you know, it wasn't anything too egregious for being a teenager, right? But having that experience of being on probation specifically, I was put on house arrest for months at a time where you can't really go anywhere but school and come home. Mind you, I'm a teenager, you know, so when you're a teenager, you want to be outside, you want to be with your friends, you want to be doing things. So I think that there's been a lot of things that made me feel really caged in, and I felt like I just fell through the cracks when I was a teenager, so that was really unfortunate, but it's just the truth that happens to many people, right, migrant or not. So having all those things led me to growing up in El Salvador, specifically till I was 10. I grew up seeing a lot of street art, specifically a lot of murals and a lot of political art. Like I told you, I grew up in the aftermath of the Civil War. So because of those reasons, I grew up seeing a lot of political work. So I always like to tell folks, I'm not going to assume that you know what I'm talking about. So street art is a visual art that's been created in different public locations for public visibility in many countries. Street art's been used as a tool of resistance for many generations around the whole world. From Palestine to El Salvador to here in the United States, and literally everywhere, you will see street art. It encompasses many mediums like graffiti, wheat pasting, and muralism, and others. Here are some photos to give you an example of what I mean, specifically the El Salvador mural, because I grew up seeing this piece. And then I'm going to get into what wheat pasting is, because I'm not going to assume that you know, right? Wheat pasting is a form of public art where paper posters, me specifically, this is what I wrote. What I wrote here is like not the technical definition. This is my definition of like what I do to my work, right? So it's a form of public art, specifically with paper posters. They're stuck to the wall, they're pasted onto the wall. I used a wheat paste recipe for a long time that was literally just flour and water. If you're coming to my workshop tomorrow, I'll teach you how to do that. But yeah, this has been utilized for many generations around the world. Wheat paste is made from a simple flour and water recipe. You can put other things in it, like flour and sugar, but like sugar and salt, but I don't do that. one of the aspects and the whole point of wheat pasting is the importance of it is the accessibility aspect, and it being made from ingredients that you should be able to easily access is a drawing point for it. You can make it on the spot. You don't have to be at home to make this glue, but you can also make a more elaborate recipe at home using hot water, but this is something that you can literally make on the street as you're on the go, putting water and flour in a bottle and just shaking it, and you're ready to go. That's a big, important aspect of wheat pasting, is the importance of the DIY and the accessibility of it. So this is that's me on the street, what it can look like to make wheat paste. The first time I watched, when I first started doing this work, I really had no concept of what I was doing, which is really important for me to tell folks, because I was literally just like, okay, I want to put up art like the posters on the street that I see with advertisements, but I don't know what kind of paper they use. I don't know what kind of glue they use. So I literally just Googled it, in a video of Shepard Fairey. It popped up. I don't know if y'all know who Shepard Fairey is. Yes. I was like, okay, I don't want to learn everything from a white man on YouTube. I mean, shout out to him, because I did learn how to make it that way. But that's also why I like to teach it, because we don't always have to learn things from white men. But I make a much more simple version. He had like chemicals in there, and I was like, all right. But yeah, like I was telling y'all earlier, I was raised on this work. Didn't necessarily understand what was going on with it, but it is something that stuck in me. So by the time that I got older, and I was living in New York City at this point, this was during the first Trump administration. Now we're getting into the beginning of the Unapologetic Street Series. I was living in New York City. I wanted to build community somehow. I wanted to connect with folks. You know, I've always known that migrant, working class folks, we all have our similar shared lived experiences. Not everybody has your same story, but we do have some similarities. So I wanted to find a way to connect with folks because of that, right? I'm a firm believer that the more we share our stories with each other and the things that we experience, the less isolated we feel. Because specifically with Latin folks, Latinx folks, you know that our families teach us to keep things to ourselves. You know, we don't talk about certain things in public. We don't talk about certain things with people that we don't know. But those things also keep us isolated, and they train us to endure. And I think that that's a big aspect of sometimes, you know, being a migrant is how much can you endure, and the endurance of migration. So anyway, I'm gonna ask you all a question. I need you to be honest, okay? How many of you would be likely, okay, your friend texts you or you see it on the street, a link to a SoundCloud? Are you listening to it? Okay, but for real, like if you're doing this, just keep your hand down. None of you. Oh, one. Okay, 1, 2. I'm gonna give you all 3 to be generous. So there's 3 of you who would listen to a SoundCloud link that your friend sent you. That is amazing. Thank you for listening to the things that your friends send you. But for most of you, that's not the case, right? So the work started on SoundCloud, and we weren't gonna get anywhere there, okay? So it was literally like a spoken word situation, and I had GarageBand on my computer. So you go on there and you can do the little loops and you can do these little beats. And I was just doing that. It was literally like a GarageBand situation with me talking to myself. So we weren't gonna get anywhere. My mom was listening to it, I think. And I was like, I need to just take the things I'm saying on to myself and put them up in a public space where I know that people will benefit more than just me like telling the internet and the void. So I did. I was like, okay, I'm gonna print out this little paper, and I told you all this a few slides ago. I didn't know what I was doing, okay? So now we're figuring out how this is gonna exist into the world and come to be. So I'm Googling, I'm figuring out a wheat paste recipe. I'm like, okay, we're gonna print this out in 8x11, black and white. I am not a graphic designer. At this point, I don't know what I'm doing, so we don't need to get fancy with it. It's just gonna be a black and white piece of paper. And this is it right here. This was the first poster ever that I made on the street. Above is an image of Khalif Browder. If anybody in here is familiar with Khalif's story, if you're not, I really do encourage you to learn. His name is Khalif Browder. He was a juvenile from New York City, incarcerated at a young age for something he did not do, and endured a lot in that system, and eventually came out and committed suicide. So please do learn about Khalif's story. Khalif was the first person I ever centered in my work because I connected to parts of his story, being an incarcerated juvenile myself. I put up his portrait in New York City, the city where he was from, because I really felt like people needed to come face to face with this young man and what had happened. But yeah, stop fetishizing brown and black bodies was literally the first thing I ever made. There was no Instagram for this work. There was not even a thought of Instagram for this work. It was just something that was outside, you know? And one day I'm walking and I overhear some kids, the teenagers, talking about the poster, and I was like, oh yeah, like the kids are listening, that's cool. And then I was like, okay, but they don't know where to go. They don't know who or what's going on with this work. So I then decided to make an Instagram account, which at the time was called the Unapologetically Brown Series, which I changed the name to because I learned that there is already the Unapologetically Black. So I didn't want to co-opt, and I changed the name to the series. Which leads me to talking about this a little bit before we go further into my own work, because it's important for me to acknowledge this and researching and learning how to create public art outside, which I had to do, right? I really think it's important for all of us who work in public spaces to acknowledge the responsibilities that we have as artists creating publicly. You know, everybody's being subjected to the things that you're putting outside, so you should have some decorum with it, right? Have to be demure. So everybody, all of us in this room, we all have our own voice. You know, you don't need to have the person next to you speaking for you, but no one is voiceless in this room, but nobody needs to speak for them either, right? So I think one of the things that's really important is we all should learn from each other, and we should know when it's not our time and when it isn't our experience to speak for. I see this in public spaces all the time, specifically with advertisements. You'll see Kendall Jenner wearing in a Nike Cortez ad. You know, I don't know if y'all know, but the Nike Cortez shoe is a very significantly black and brown, for cultural reasons, specific shoe, okay? For me to see a white girl in Nike Cortez is a little crazy. But whoever decided to make Kendall Jenner, put her in some Cortezes and throw her in an ad, or even, I'm sorry for Kendall Jenner because I'm going on her, but the Pepsi commercial, right? Like, y'all remember, if you're not familiar, Kendall Jenner Pepsi commercial, it was atrocious. But how many people have to approve those things, right? How many, I mean, I'm telling y'all, like, so many people had to sit. There was meetings on meetings and meetings for the meetings of the people that had to approve all these things. So that's why I talk about this and it being really important, because you can be surprised how much will go over so many people's heads, surprisingly, right? There was probably more people that there are in this room to make that commercial happen. So it just blows my mind that the responsibilities that we have to each other are not thought of. But we're out here trying, you know, as smaller independent artists. But yeah, I think it's really important to invite folks in public spaces to reimagine what it looks like, what our worlds look like. And, you know, to engage people and to invite them to really think about reimagining what not only our future looks like, but our now. So I think we talk about the future a lot, but I'm like, damn, what about the people, what about us right now? You know, some of us aren't gonna get to the future, so what do we do now? So I think that's really important to talk about, you know, checking our privilege and passing the mic. This is something that I feel advertisers need to do way more thoroughly. Anybody who's taking up public space in this way, we need to be more responsible to each other, for sure. This is some of the beginning of my work once we got past the 8x11 black and white, okay? But this is still early work. I see this and I'm like, okay. This was early into work. I was like, I told you I'm not a graphic designer. I still would not call myself a graphic designer because I am not properly trained, okay? So my work was very much me trying to figure out how to create images that were beautiful but also very powerful. So my work eventually became, and what it is today, aesthetically very soft in its colors, but the messaging and the text being so powerful and so blunt, I think sometimes causes confusion for people. They'll ask me, well, why pink? Well, why flowers? Why soft colors? And I think it's a good reminder to tell folks, you've been taught in this society that soft feminine colors are to be disregarded and to be discarded. You're taught that pink is for girls and that blue is for boys, and there's a binary in even art and colors. So I wanted to really, really, challenge you to think of these things differently and to know that you can have these things holding hands, because femininity and power go hand in hand. My mom also, when I told you I came to the US and I was like, this is not it. My mom started to buy those little synthetic flowers from the 99-cent store, Dollar Tree, those little fake flowers, fake fruits. So I came home one day from school and the house there's like fake flowers everywhere. And I'm like, this is giving a service home, a funeral home. But I told my mom, I was like, Mom, this is very sweet. But I was a kid, I didn't care. I was like, whatever. And then I got older, and then I was like, oh yeah, my mom, she really tried with that. Like, bless her, love her for that. So I started to use those same synthetic flowers, and earlier of my work, I don't do that anymore because they're not great for our environment, plastic flowers. So now we're using real flowers. They don't last as long, but it's much better. But yeah, as you can see here, the work got bigger, the work got brighter, and I was living in Washington, D.C. for a few years. So if you see on this Honor Your Queer and Trans Ancestors, that's in Thomas Circle. I practiced in D.C. for a good 3 years. It's probably one of my favorite times making artwork, because in that city, I love to chol all the fads. But yeah, so this is still older work. These are the synthetic flowers that I'm talking about in this Sylvia Rivera piece. They're literally just, the poster is taped on there, but the posters are pasted, but the flowers is tape. You can see the tape right there. But we got the work up there, and that's what really mattered. But of course, we've evolved, And public surfaces, they're not all the same. I love talking about public surfaces, but nobody likes to hear me talk. I think that utilizing, first of all, with my work specifically, I'm not talking for other street artists, I like to use what I call public surfaces, for real public surfaces. And that's usually federal property, which is not great on the same coin, right? But I'm talking electric boxes, which is this box right here with bell hooks. That's an electric box. And surfaces that are literally off the street. I don't like to paste on private buildings and things like that because, then we're entering, another technicality. But I really do like public spaces because I consider that to be our taxes pay for that. These are the people's surfaces, right? So here, and specifically for this stop sign, they were building something in DC, I remember, and I looked into it, and it was a bunch of billionaires basically paying for it. So I decided to go over there and paste up a few posters for specifically talking about billionaires. And I've done that throughout my work, specifically making posters for specific locations. There was a time there that I did a huge series on ICE. This was years ago, but only put the posters up in Beverly Hills, which really pissed them off. They did not want to see that stuff there. But yeah, for me, it's really fun to be specific about the locations that I'm going into sometimes, and what goes where and for what. Now we're growing together here. So this is more recent work. This specific billboard was in Los Angeles. I've curated for the past 2 years a billboard gallery. So I work with this organization called Save Art Space. Y'all should go follow them because they're constantly looking for artists to submit their artwork for their various billboard shows around the country. So there's always somebody curating a really cool art show for Save Art Space. So I curated a show 2 years ago, this was from 2 years ago, around queer people and food. And I mean specifically the way that queer people make kinship and family through food, and how we utilize it to create that community and to create that family. So that's what this billboard is about. We ended up getting 4 billboards around Los Angeles with different artists. We did it again this year, but this year's theme was on migration. Then recently, a year ago, so I want to talk about, I told you all I was undocumented, right? I was undocumented up until 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I got my permanent residency. It's always a double-edged sword. You know, white man's papers are not all they're cut out to be, and especially now that we're seeing the world that we're living in. To be honest with you, I feel more fear now with a green card than I ever did being undocumented, which is wild, right? That's just the truth. With my green card, I was able to go to Bologna, Italy this past year to do an art residency. Taking my work internationally was a dream come true for me, but very specifically doing this work in Italy with this organization named CHEAP. That's also a cool organization to put y'all on if you are interested in doing public work in international spaces. CHEAP is also constantly looking for art from artists around the world to put up in Bologna. So write that down if you have anything that you ever want to submit. They're on Instagram, literally just put in CHEAP and they'll come up. CHEAP International. But they focus on, they have an agreement with the city basically where they can put up work wherever they want. And it's really cool because they have specific places for it, which one, it makes it stay longer. People are usually bother it less, but obviously it depends on what it is. And then working with the university, we were able to put up this is the largest installation I've ever worked on. This took up the whole block. I know you kind of can't tell in the picture, but it took up the whole block. And it was something that wasn't received very well at first. They tore this down within 48 hours of us putting it up. But I'm not surprised, right? And before we could go back to fix it, students from the university had come to try and fix it themselves. So they came and rewrote the letters themselves, which was amazing. And it really goes to show the importance of being resilient with public spaces and public art, specifically when you know that it may not last a long time. That's one of the things with this medium is that you have to be okay with the fact that it may not last very long. Once you leave something on the street, it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the public. And the public may not always receive it well. But lucky for them, I just go out and put it again. So so I wanted to give you some visuals of what my work has looked like over the years. And now something I really, really enjoy talking about is, in the beginning I told you I wanted to make a community. Now posters on the street aren't necessarily gonna do that, right? So something that we started pretty immediately after the Unapologetic Street Series began was to do in-person events. And they were all gonna look differently, right? But the first time that we ever did something was in August of 2017. That was like when this work really, really first began. And after I started to see people engaging with it on the street and then making the social media for it, I did a pop-up show in Brooklyn. I would say that the room was about, we're not gonna intake the gallery, we're just gonna talk like this, like half this space. And in this picture, you see me sitting next to my partner, who was just my little friend at the time, but that's my fiance now. She and I were like, let's just have a pop-up, let's see if folks come through, what happens, have a little food, have just a moment to be with each other and see what happens. I really did not know what to expect, but we were at standing room only. And I was just like, oh, people are paying attention to the work on the streets. And after that, we continued to have events. It's one of the pillars of my work. Without having community events and things that are in person, this work doesn't make that much of a difference, because me going out on the street and putting up posters that people will see or people will put pictures up on Instagram doesn't really get me anywhere. The important aspect of this work is the real life engagement, the real connection with people at spaces like this or at pop-ups that I do. This work has taken me all kinds of places, which is wild. When I first started this work, I didn't anticipate it. Like I said, it didn't even have an Instagram. I dropped out of high school when I was 17 years old. So for me to be in these specific academic spaces sometimes blows my mind, but I always like to acknowledge, if it weren't for social media, I probably wouldn't be here, not because my work isn't important, but because I've used social media as a mic. We'll get to that later. But yeah, it's been the pleasure of my life, seriously, to do this work, but to do this work and engage with people like we're doing today. So yeah, this is just some pictures. We've gone to the Met, Stanford, all kinds of places. And I like to acknowledge, I wouldn't have been in those spaces without this work. So yeah, these are some photos of over the years. The community events are specifically the ones that are the jewel of what we do. We've had in-person events, block parties, workshops. We've rented out the nail salon and given out free manicures. Yeah, because this work and the work that we do is geared towards inviting all of us to really be consistent participants of our liberation. And our liberation is interconnected, okay? So when you're going into spaces like a nail salon and you're getting resources about know your rights for ICE, or you're getting reproductive health care resources at the same time that you're receiving a service. Salons and places like that have been historically used by people for organizing, specifically in the civil rights movement. People were using salons in different spaces like that, specifically places of care, of self-care. So for me, it's been really important to go into all kinds of things and do all kinds of events that you may think, oh, well, what does this have to do with street art? But it doesn't have to always make sense. It's just, it will always intertwine anyway. So now we're gonna talk about Instagram. All right, raise your hand if you use Instagram or TikTok or some other social media. Look at all those hands. And compare to my SoundCloud question. You see? All right. So we got on Instagram. And when I say we, it's really me. But when I say me, I just feel weird. Plus, I do consider myself a community taught artist, and I don't think I would be here without learning from so many different artists and people throughout my career. So it's a we. We got on social media, and social media is a double-edged sword, all right? You're on here and you can't control what Netflix does, you can't control what the pages of magazines do, but you can control, well, sometimes your feed on Instagram, because they'll give you all kinds of suggestions. But it's really important for us to remember, like, social media is great, but it's also a double-edged sword. Everything that you're reading, everything that you're intaking, whether you realize it or not, you are holding on to that subconsciously and consciously. Okay, we were not meant to have access to as much as we have access to, and it's a serious overdrive for our nervous systems and for our systems of being in general. But I do think that if you follow people who inspire you, if you follow people who keep you informed, who keep you connected, who make you feel like you are able to make a difference, and whatever that looks like, all of us in this room and life in general have something to share with each other. You have a tool, you have a gift that goes into this box, okay? And then hopefully in this box, we're able to utilize the things in it to not be living like we're living now, okay? There's so much around us right now that we can't control, and very specifically in what we are dealing with as a country and as folks who live in this society. Still, the internet and social media can be a power and a tool for DIY organizing and DIY connecting with folks. Like I told you, I probably wouldn't be here if it weren't for social media and for having that platform. But with anything, we just want to be mindful of how we utilize this. So please, if you're following people and you're like, damn, why don't I look like this? Let them go. If you're following somebody who you're like, damn, this pisses me off. Like, what are you doing? Let them go. And then here comes the aspect of accessibility with my work. Social media is the mic, but the streets are the platform. I really like to reiterate that any chance I get, because yes, Instagram has allowed me to, to gain a platform and to utilize it to spread a message and to reach people I wouldn't be able to normally reach. But the work is tangible. It's on the streets. It's real life. And that's been really important for me. So I would say, generously, maybe 65 to 70% of my work is available for free on my website for you to download under community resources. There's coloring pages on there. There's a screenshot. Coloring pages, my wheat paste recipe is on there, and free downloadable posters are on there. Because I do believe that the work must be accessible if the work is gonna exist outside. For the past 7 years that this work has been made available online, 8 years, we've had people all over the country print them out and put them up in their own neighborhoods. I get tagged consistently of posters I've never in my life put up myself. So I know that it's out there, and I know that it's existing, and it's being utilized by folks. Which leads me to our Purple Community Box. This is the real life community resources Google Drive in person. This is, and it's not just one, there's several, but this is just the only one I put on here. This one was the first one, and it was, it lived in Washington, D.C. for 3 years on the street, right by the bus stop. And for a good 2.5 years, we had consistent artwork being dropped in, not just by me, but by other artists in the community. I would tell people, hey, like if you have something that you want to give to folks, just put it in there. Luckily, we never had anybody put anything wild. We would have folks put in masks, hand sanitizer. This was during the pandemic. So there was also, if you see in the picture, we had hand sanitizer next to this box because we felt it was important people are touching surfaces. So this was the first time that we made this community box, and then it was up for quite a little bit, and then it moved to LA and New York. So yeah, that, like I told you, the accessibility aspect of this work is really important, but also having physical manifestations of what we do online has also been really, really important. And like I told you earlier, I do all kinds of things in my work with my art. If you're not familiar with my work at all, you may think, what the heck does a tomato candle have anything to do with street art? But throughout my work, I've really enjoyed utilizing different objects to carry similar messages than the street posters did. Specifically with the tomato candle, I worked with a brand in LA. I grew the tomatoes myself. Then we used the leaves of my tomato plants for the oil, for the coconut oil, for the candle. And then we had a poster on the street that talked about the importance of, us growing with each other as community, but we tied it in with the tomatoes. So it was, I don't have a picture of it right now, but it was really cute. We have aprons because we did the Blessed Are the Queers cooking meals for each other. So like that makes sense. I did skateboards because I'm a street artist, and skateboards go on the street or anywhere else, but all on the street. So yeah, as you can see, I really enjoy doing all kinds of collaborations with people, not just necessarily posters. I like objects, I like things. So that's why it's fun to share those intersections of my work. That's it.
If folks have questions, question over here. No, I got it. We can reach. There we go.
Hi, you have really such a beautiful medium for liberation work. Can you talk more about how you've had to navigate surveillance and the suppression of your voice in the public space that you're doing this?
Yeah. Is this loud enough for everyone?
No, I'm coming.
No. I'll get up. Thank you for that question. Also, shout out to you, because when I speak publicly, I tend to pick 1 or 2 people in the audience to look at a lot, and I looked at you a lot, so I hope I didn't freak you out. But yeah, I think specifically, like I said earlier, I've been more afraid now being a green card holder than I was undocumented because of everything that's going on. I've never felt as scared as I do now. And I lived in DC during the first Trump administration, and I was clowning those people on the street, like for real. But now I'm like, oh, would I do that right now? I don't know. Maybe at night, because I tend to pace up during the day. So that's my other thing is I like to pace up in the daytime. I don't like to go out at night. Okay, I told y'all I'm very introverted. I like to be in bed by 10. So I like to go out during the day. I do find myself pacing up a little later now. But yeah, absolutely. There's fear. There's more fear than I've ever had. More conversations with my lawyer than I've ever had about, what I'm doing. Having to have conversations of like what the precedence is in the courts of street art. I'm talking about Shepard Fairey again. But Shepard Fairey actually got a bunch of felonies a few years ago, a while ago now, for street work that he was doing in Boston. And the chief of police was just like, excuse my language, but the chief of police was like, man, fuck this guy, and I'm gonna hit him with a felony for every poster I find in the city. So they actually like hit him with a bunch of charges, threw him in jail, and like wouldn't give him his insulin and shit. So it was horrible. But my lawyer came to me and said, hey, the Fed, like, they lost that case. They took L's on that case. So at least we know that. So yeah, there's been a lot of conversations and a lot of having to, what does it look like to do my work right now as a person who's not a citizen? Yeah, there's a lot of thinking of it, but the work continues, and I started this work being undocumented. I started this work, under much more precarious situations, so it will continue. Maybe just a little later at night, but it will continue. Thank you.
So you're going to use this one to talk? Okay, any other questions? Right here.
Hello. First of all, thank you so much for coming out, and this was an amazing presentation. I'm really moved and inspired by your work. So I wanted to ask, I know like oftentimes like cities and they tend to like paint over or destroy the street art that's on there. So how do you practice like resilience, and like how do you, or like what keeps you motivated to continue doing this despite the actions that are trying to destroy your work?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've lost a lot in life. I have a sincere understanding that work doesn't belong to me anymore once it's up on the street. I've also been doing it for so long that like I've seen all kinds of things done to it. Like we had, I've had people like take like those thick Sharpies and write like racist bullshit on one. Somebody once wrote, "You're a menace," and then we did a street menace series on. So, yeah, like there's I do understand that it doesn't belong to me anymore, and I have to like be okay with that. Does it bother me? Of course. Sometimes I'm like, this is crazy. Like y'all are wasting your time. Who carries a Sharpie that size anyway? Yeah, it wasn't like a normal one. It was just, very thick. So yeah, I try to just understand that and do the work. There's times where I won't paste up for like a couple of months, and then I'm like, girl, you are not who you say you are anymore if you're not out on the street, right? So I do try to be consistent, but there are times where I'm like deflated and I feel defeated, but I go back out there, and seeing the mail lady and seeing the Dominican lady at the hair salon makes my day, having that consistency of seeing people on the street when I work is what keeps me going out there. That's why I don't like to do it at night. Of course, thank you. Anybody else?
I have a question, if no one else has a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, where did you go?
I'm over here. Instagram was how I first connected with your work. I remember during COVID, your bread making escapades, and being just everyone watching Instagram Live together and just watching you make bread. But another thing is, maybe switch off your, it's because I'm over here. Thank you. Your affinity for using pop culture in your work. I have 2 of your Star Wars related posters at home. And then also on your website for sale, you have one about public television featuring Sesame Street. Do you want to talk a little bit about pop culture and how you incorporate it into your work?
Yeah, I love pop culture. I know way too much I know way too much of what's going on. But I think it was a coping mechanism from when I came to the U.S. And you know, we moved around a lot when I was growing up, and there was a lot of, you know, J14 magazines and Tiger Beat and all that stuff, right? So I was reading a lot of that when I was also learning English, and I was watching a lot of TV. I actually credit PBS to me learning English because it's how it happened for real, for real. Bear in the Big Blue House when I got lucky and got Disney. But yeah, I think for me, utilizing pop culture specifically allows me to kind of engage with acknowledging the truths of it. For example, I have 1 or 2 Marvel posters, but yeah, 2. One is for WandaVision and the other one is for Spider-Man. But the Spider-Man one talks about the capitalism and fake media, as in like when media utilizes itself to lie to the people. So that's what the Spider-Man poster is like talking about, and then using it in a way that is ironic, but also I like Spider-Man growing up, right? But I also understand that Marvel is a tool of propaganda. You know, Marvel is not just my opinion, this is a fact. Marvel is paid millions of dollars by the military to, and you know, continue the propaganda of that military complex system. So for me, it's like using it because we grew up with these things and we have, you know, nostalgia and we love these characters, and also we can understand that they're utilized against us. And yeah, so for me, it's like I love Star Wars, right? I use Star Wars. I use an Ahsoka Tano specific. I made a poster a quote from her where she talks about holding it doesn't say elected officials, but something along the lines of like when our leaders aren't holding themselves accountable to us, we must hold them accountable. So utilizing those things in a way that I can make them make sense into my work is always fun for me. But I do try and be careful with what in pop culture, you know, I do.
The copyright lawsuit.
Oh, it's not even that. I should think about that more, but it's more like not everything deserves a moment, but yeah.
Hello, thank you for your talk and thank you for coming. I have a question about how in your community work, how has your art intersected or in some ways engaged with other forms of artistic media like dance or music or even other kinds of visual arts? How have you seen that working out in community spaces?
For me, I like to work with other artists in whatever mediums they have, which is why I put the slide with like the objects, because most of those things were made in collaboration with other people. I like working with folks in organic and collaborative ways, depending on whatever they're doing and whatever their medium is. I haven't specifically worked with other musicians or in the performance arts specifically, but I think at the end of it, when you take the artistic side of it, the work is based on our collective liberation, and dance and music will help liberate us all for real. So I'm always open to different types of collaborations. Yeah. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk and for your work. My question is more centered about your work. So your work centers around care and building community, a sense of belonging. So my question is more like, how does Johanna takes care of Johanna during these times? You have mentioned that that you feel not safe, or you feel I don't want to say in danger, but I think we live in dangerous times right now, especially for immigrants and undocumented people. That, I mean, the fear doesn't go away, right?
Yeah.
So how do you take care of yourself during this time?
Thank you for
and
that
creating
question.
all this art?
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, good question. How do I? I think for me, I think sometimes we hear that question and we want to give some poetic answer, but I truly don't have one for you right now. I'm here, but sometimes it feels like I'm barely here. Even just getting to this gig alone, I'm flying in from Los Angeles, and I went to the DMV about a month ago to go get my real ID because the last time I traveled, I went to Puerto Rico using my green card, and they gave me a hard time about it at the airport. They were like, this doesn't confirm your identity, and I was like, this is more official than a driver's license. I don't even know what you're talking about. But they were so ugly about it, and they made me stand with a TSA agent to go through the line. It was really, I say traumatic, and I don't mean that lightly, because in that moment I'm horrified that ICE is gonna pop out and take me to another room, but that's just to get here. So I told folks, I was like, hey, my real ID hasn't come in the mail yet, and I'm scared to fly to DC with my green card. That's a crazy feeling, right? So I think for me right now, honestly, I've just been trying to use all the tools I've learned in therapy. I'm going back to therapy because I stopped doing it because I thought that, my therapist was like, yeah, girl, if you want to take a break, you're doing great, but come back when you need me. And I was like, please, girl, can't be taking breaks right now. So I actually go back to therapy next month. And I'm thinking about taking medication, actually being medicated. And here I am telling you all my business. But I told you, if we don't talk about these things, then we feel isolated. I also yeah, I get hyper fixated on things. So that helps, interest. So I had my wicked face for a while, and I'm gonna go see Chapel Row next month. So there are little things, that help. And then I'm like, damn, everything sucks. How do we not be complicit in literally everything we do? So, but yeah, you try and find those pockets of joy and rest for sure. So that's what I'm trying to do now. So I'm sorry I don't have a great answer for you. No bath bombs. No, yeah, I don't have any of that right now. But thank you for that question.
And thank you for that honest answer. I think a lot of people appreciated it. I did.
Thank you.
Mine's a little lighter, maybe. How does the work you do has it changed the way you encounter new places? Like when you come into Baltimore, do you look at the city, the built environment, the public and private spaces, the walls, the surfaces, in different ways as a result of your work?
I have a whole folder on my phone of spots that I like. So if I'm out walking somewhere or in a car, I'll drop a pin and label it potential spot on whatever street, whatever, So I'm always looking, I'm always touching surfaces, touching walls. I'm a huge fan of washing your hands because I touch so many things. But yeah, absolutely. Every city that I go into, I'm always looking, where could a poster go? Where is the art, for other artists? Where are they pasting up? So yeah, absolutely. It's a joy of mine to engage with this work, and also being a person who enjoys to see other people's work in public spaces. Absolutely.
All right, so I was thinking about how you use pop culture references in your art in order to inspire and invoke conversation about who these characters are and what they stand for. A really big thing about that is symbolism, right? How you say that Marvel movies, they do oftentimes can and do serve a lot of, political agendas. And being able to take this character, right, and dig deeper into who they are, we start to introduce conversations like, what does it mean to actually be a good person? Take the latest Superman movie, right? So my question to you is, how do you think for we as like community culture nowadays, where everything is revolving around the media, and that's pretty much our main source of like, yes, this is what's going on, this is what I see, this is what I'm engaging with. How should we start to reflect and look at it and take it in and do something with it?
That's a great question. I think all of us are going to have our individual experiences with these characters and these things in general, and the things that we're intaking from social media and pop culture. I think that for me personally, it was important, and it is important to utilize these things, because sometimes if you're walking down the street and you see a poster and it says, you know, something about gun violence, or you may ignore it. You may not want to read it. If you're walking down the street and you see Ahsoka Tano, right? And you like Ahsoka Tano, and you like Star Wars, you're going to engage. But then you're going to see a message that's going to force you to engage with yourself and now have another conversation, whether it's with yourself or with whoever you're with, right? So it's going to make you look at this differently, because I'm taking that character or whoever, whatever, and placing it in another context for you. WandaVision. Wanda is my favorite Marvel character because she's lost a lot, and she understands that. That's why I connected with Wanda. Then Wanda kidnapped the whole town and, you know, killed people. That's complicated. You know? Exactly. Women's wrongs, sometimes I'm here for it, you know? Right, exactly, I'm here for it. But yeah, to go back to the point is, I want to engage with you in a way that maybe you wouldn't engage before, because I'm utilizing characters and beloved things that will bring you nostalgia. And that's how it works for me. You know, that's why I'm using these things into my work, because they bring me nostalgia, but I'm also able to utilize them in a different way. Thank you for that question.
Everyone, please enjoy refreshments in the back and feel free to mingle. Give Johanna a little bit of a break to catch her breath for a bit, and then you can come and ask questions.